The call came on a rainy Thursday night. Julia's voice was shaking, high-pitched, almost theatrical. "David, I've been in an accident. The car's totaled, I'm in the ER. Please come." My chest seized, the world tilted, and I flew out of the office so fast I left my laptop behind. When I got to County General, she was already in a wheelchair, arm in a sling, a bruise blooming across her forehead like a purple flower. She looked fragile, broken, small. I dropped to my knees beside her, grabbing her hand. "Jesus, Julia, are you okay?" She winced, milked the moment. "I'll live." Some asshole ran a red light. They let me take her home that night, prescription painkillers rattling in a bottle in my pocket, discharge papers folded neat. I cooked her soup, helped her to bed, kissed her hair, told her I'd take care of everything. That night I sat awake in the dark, staring at the crumpled wreck of her car in the driveway. It didn't look right. The front end was smashed, sure, but the airbags hadn't deployed. No blood on the windshield. No skid marks on the street where she said it happened. The next morning she was already on the phone with the insurance company, her voice syrupy sweet. Yes, of course I can send photos." The other driver fled, but luckily I wasn't too badly hurt. She winked at me like it was all just business. I frowned but stayed quiet. Maybe I was paranoid. 2 days later, she asked me to drive her to a follow-up appointment. We pulled into a strip mall and she disappeared into a chiropractor's office. 30 minutes later she came out with a stack of paperwork and a grin. "This is good. It proves soft tissue damage. That's where the real money is." She said it like she'd just closed a deal, not like she was talking about her broken body. That night, curiosity ate at me. While she showered, I pulled the folder from her bag. Inside were forms already filled. Insurance claims with exaggerated injuries, projected payouts in the tens of thousands. One even had a sticky note on it that read, "Ask for $75K, they'll settle for $50." My throat went dry. I slipped the papers back, heart hammering, and tried to act normal. But I couldn't stop noticing things. Her sling came off the second she thought no one was watching. She bent down to tie her shoes without a wince. And one night, when she thought I was asleep, I heard her on the phone whispering, "Don't worry, I've done this before. It'll work." That line stuck in my skull like a splinter. I've done this before. With who? When? I lay there staring at the ceiling, realizing this accident wasn't an accident at all. It was a setup. A scam. And the woman I thought I knew had just dragged me straight into it. After that night, I couldn't look at Julia the same. Every groan she made, every wince when she shifted on the couch felt rehearsed, like lines in a play she'd memorized. She left her laptop open once when she went to make tea and I saw a spreadsheet. Yes, a fucking spreadsheet, titled Claims. My pulse spiked. I didn't dare click, but the preview showed rows of numbers, names of companies, dates. When she came back, I was pretending to read the news on my phone, but my mind was already racing. The next day I told her I had to stay late at work. Instead, I drove to the body shop where her car had been towed. The mechanic, a guy named Luis I'd used before, shook his head when he saw me. "Your wife's car? That wasn't a collision, man. Somebody took a sledgehammer to the bumper, maybe a bat. Engine's fine, airbags untouched. I don't know what story she told you, but it wasn't no accident." His words slammed into me like a fist. I asked around quietly, careful not to set off alarms. One of Julia's old co-workers owed me a favor. Over beers he let it slip. She had a car wreck once before. Same deal, tiny bruise, big payout. Guy she was with swore it ruined him. Lost his house. You didn't hear it from me. My stomach turned. That night Julia was on the couch filling out more forms, groaning about her back pain, while shifting like nothing hurt. I excused myself, went to the bedroom and opened her closet. Tucked in a shoebox behind old heels was a stack of mail. Old insurance checks, copies of claims, all with her name. Not one, not two, 5 different settlements over the last 10 years. Different cities, different companies. Always the same Julia. Always the same act. I stuffed the box back before she noticed, sat down beside her, kissed her temple like everything was fine. She smiled, leaned into me, whispered, "We'll be set soon. No more worrying about bills." My stomach churned. But it wasn't just money. I realized she wasn't just pulling me into fraud. If this blew up, I'd go down with her. Joint accounts. Shared assets. My name on every line. She was using me as cover, the concerned husband, the idiot she dragged into her scam. That night I called Chris, my oldest friend, and told him everything. He went quiet for a long time, then said, "You need proof. Real proof. Otherwise she'll turn it on you. Make it look like you were the one behind it." His words made my blood run cold because he was right. Julia wasn't stupid. She was careful. If she'd done this before, she knew exactly how to make me the fall guy. So I made a decision. I wasn't just going to expose her. I was going to catch her red-handed. And as if fate wanted to test me, Julia told me the next morning, her eyes sparkling, "We have an appointment with the insurance adjuster next week. Just follow my lead, okay?" I smiled, nodded, kissed her cheek. Inside, I was already planning how I'd burn her whole scam to the ground. Julia spent the week rehearsing like she was about to perform on Broadway. Every time she thought I wasn't looking, she'd practice walking with a limp, clutching her side, wincing dramatically. She even timed herself in the mirror, sighing, moaning, then smiling at her reflection when she thought she nailed it. It was sickening. At night she'd go over her script with me, whispering, "If they ask, just say I can't sleep without the meds. Say I haven't cooked or cleaned in weeks. Say you have to help me shower." The way she grinned, the way her eyes gleamed, it wasn't nerves. It was excitement. She loved this shit. I played along, nodding, telling her, "Don't worry, I'll back you up." Inside I was seething. Chris and I had already hatched a plan. He loaned me a tiny recorder, the kind PIs use, small enough to tape under the kitchen table. I wanted her words, her bragging, something undeniable. 2 nights before the meeting I got it. She was on the phone with someone, her coach, maybe another scammer. She whispered, "Yes, I already did the fake x-ray. He doesn't suspect a thing. He'll play the supportive husband. He always does." I nearly broke the table in half, pulling the recorder off and checking the file. Clear as day. Her voice, her words, her confession. The morning of the appointment she wore a soft cardigan, hair tied back, not too much makeup. The perfect picture of the wounded housewife. She practiced her lines again in the car. I just gripped the wheel, heart pounding, because I knew what I had in my pocket. The recorder. The folder of old claims I'd copied. Photos from the body shop. All the proof I needed to flip her performance on its head. We walked into the adjuster's office, a middle-aged guy in a suit with tired eyes. He smiled politely, shook hands, and gestured for us to sit. Julia sank into her chair with a groan, clutched her ribs and sighed, "It's been so hard." She squeezed my hand and I squeezed back, masking the fury boiling in me. The adjuster asked the usual questions, clicking his pen. Julia put on her show, crying about her trauma, wincing every time she shifted, even asking for water halfway through to catch her breath like it physically pained her to talk. She was good. Too good. If I hadn't known, I might have believed her. Then the adjuster turned to me. "And you, sir? How has this affected you?" Julia gave me a quick look, her silent signal to stick to the script. I stared at her for a long beat, then turned back to him and opened my mouth. This was it. The moment I'd been waiting for. The adjuster looked at me with those bored eyes, pen clicking like a metronome, waiting for my lines. Julia gave me the smallest squeeze on the knee, the silent cue she'd been drilling into me all week. Stick to the script, play the grieving husband. I took a deep breath, looked her dead in the eye, then turned back to him. "It's been hell," I started, voice steady. "Sleepless nights, endless stress." Her lips curled into the faintest smile, ready to bask in the glow of her performance. Then I leaned forward and added, "But not for the reasons she told you." Julia's head whipped toward me. "David," she hissed, but I didn't stop. I pulled the folder from my jacket, spread it across the adjuster's desk. Photocopies of old claims, checks with her name, records from 3 different states. Then I laid the mechanic's report on top. Her car wasn't in a collision. The damage was staged. And this isn't her first rodeo. She's been pulling this scam for years. The adjuster froze, pen halfway to the paper. Julia's smile shattered. "He's lying," she screamed, voice suddenly sharp, the fragile act vanishing like smoke. "He's jealous, he's controlling, I cut her off by setting the recorder on the desk, pressing play. Her voice filled the office. "Yes, I already did the fake x-ray. He doesn't suspect a thing. He'll play the supportive husband. He always does." Silence dropped like a guillotine. The adjuster's jaw tightened. He scribbled something, then looked up slowly. "Mrs. Carter, do you have an explanation for this?" Julia's face went pale, her eyes darting to me, then to him. She tried to muster tears, but the words caught in her throat. That's not me that's doctored, he's trying to ruin me." "Enough," I snapped, my voice shaking with months of pent-up rage. "You dragged me into your fraud. You wanted me to be your cover story, your alibi, your fucking puppet. You thought I'd go down with you. Not this time." Chris had warned me this would happen. She'd twist, deflect, try to paint me as the crazy husband. But the adjuster wasn't buying it. He clicked his pen shut, slid the folder toward himself. "Thank you for bringing this to our attention, Mr. Carter. We'll be forwarding this matter to our investigations department immediately. His gaze sharpened on Julia. And I'd advise you not to leave town. Her chair screeched as she stood, face twisted, voice trembling with fury. David, you don't know what you've done. You think you've won, but you've destroyed everything. I stood too, towering over her. No, Julia. You destroyed it yourself. I just turned on the lights so everyone could see. She stormed out, slamming the door so hard the glass rattled. I sat back down, hands shaking, adrenaline pounding through me. The adjuster gave me a long look and said, "You saved yourself a world of pain, son." He stacked the papers, shut the file, and left me alone in the quiet hum of the office. I thought it was over then, that I'd cut the head off the snake. But when I got home, the house reeked of cheap perfume and gasoline. On the kitchen counter, in her neat handwriting, was a note. "If I go down, I'm taking you with me." And in the driveway where my car used to be, there was only shattered glass and the stench of burned rubber. When I saw the empty driveway, my heart stopped. Julia had taken my car, or torched it. Either way, the note on the counter was a promise, not a threat. "If I go down, I'm taking you with me." My hands shook as I called Chris. He came flying over, eyes darting between the glass on the pavement and the note in my hand. "She's spiraling, man," he muttered. "She knows the insurance company's onto her. Cornered animals bite." That night I barely slept, pacing the living room with the recorder clutched in my palm like a weapon. Every sound outside made me check the locks. At 2 a.m. I caught headlights flashing through the blinds. I peeked outside, my car parked crooked across the street, hood dented, windshield cracked. And Julia behind the wheel, head tipped back, laughing alone. I stormed out before Chris could stop me. "What the hell are you doing?" I shouted. She leaned out the window, hair wild, eyes glittering. "What does it look like? If they think I staged one accident, let's give them another." She revved the engine, tires screeching against the curb. My blood ran cold. She was going to crash my car on purpose. I lunged for the door, yanked it open, and she scrambled out, stumbling onto the sidewalk. "You ruined me," she shrieked, shoving me with both hands. "All I needed was one more payout, and you had to play the hero." Her voice cracked into sobs, but her eyes were blazing. "Do you think they'll believe you? That you were innocent? You signed the joint forms, David. Your name's on everything." Her words cut deep because she was right. If she played this carefully, I could still be dragged under with her. My whole body shook with rage. "I've got recordings, Julia. Emails. Your whole goddamn playbook. You can scream all you want, but when this goes to court, you're done." She froze just for a second, then smiled, cold, hollow. "Then I'll make sure there's no court." Before I could react, she darted to the car, grabbed the gas can from the trunk and splashed it across the hood. The fumes hit me like a punch. Chris yelled from the porch, "Stop her." I wrestled the lighter from her hand just as she flicked it. It clattered to the asphalt, sparking harmlessly. She screamed, clawing at me, kicking, thrashing like a wild animal. I pinned her arms, heart pounding, until blue lights washed across the street. The neighbors had called the cops. When they dragged her off, screaming my name like a curse, I thought it was over. But one of the officers handed me a folded paper they'd taken from her pocket. My stomach flipped when I opened it. It was a list. Dates, companies, payouts. And my name scrawled at the bottom, underlined twice. Next to it, in her handwriting, "Final scapegoat." The paper shook in my hands. Final scapegoat. That was her plan all along. Use me as the patsy, the grieving husband who helped with her claims, the idiot who signed whatever she shoved in front of him. And if she burned, I'd burn with her. The cops didn't give me much time to process. They took Julia that night, charged her with attempted arson and fraud. The insurance investigators piled on more, false medical records, staged accidents, payouts traced back years. It turned out my spreadsheet guess wasn't paranoia. She'd been running cons for nearly a decade, hopping state to state. The prosecutor called me a week later. "Mr. Carter, I'll be blunt," he said. "If you hadn't recorded her, if you hadn't brought us those documents, you'd be in the defendant's chair with her." My blood went cold. "So I'm clear?" He sighed. "You're clear, but she's going to try to drag you down anyway. Expect fireworks." Court was exactly that. Julia walked in looking like a saint, hair tied back, soft blouse, pale makeup to make her look sickly. But the second they pressed play on the recordings, the act fell apart. Her voice filled the room. "Yes, I already did the fake x-ray. He doesn't suspect a thing. He'll play the supportive husband. He always does." Gasps rippled through the courtroom. She screamed that it was doctored, that I was abusive, that I set her up. But every word out of her mouth was crushed by the evidence. Emails, checks, the body shop's report, the list with final scapegoat scrawled at the bottom. The jury didn't need long. Guilty on multiple counts: fraud, attempted arson, conspiracy. The judge's gavel hit like a thunderclap. 15 years. Julia went pale, then feral, whipping toward me shrieking, "This is your fault, David. You ruined me. You should have just kept quiet." Guards dragged her out as she kicked and screamed. I sat stone still, numb, as the weight of it all finally lifted. Afterward, people looked at me differently. Neighbors who once waved politely now whispered about how I'd taken down a con artist. The insurance company sent me a letter thanking me for my cooperation, though all I could think about was how close I'd come to losing everything. Chris came over that night with a six-pack. We sat on the porch in silence until he finally said, "You dodged a bullet, man. She would have buried you alive." I nodded slowly, staring into the dark street where the glass from my car still glimmered in the asphalt. "She almost did," I whispered. "Life is quiet now. Too quiet sometimes. I still catch myself checking the locks twice, listening for phantom footsteps outside. But then I remind myself she's behind bars. Her scams are over. And me? I walked away scarred but free. People ask if I regret marrying her, if I regret not seeing the signs. I tell them the truth. Regret? No. Because now I know how far someone will go when greed is their only god. And I know I'll never let anyone write my name on their list as the scapegoat again. Julia thought she'd found her perfect mark. Instead, she found the man who ended her game for good. Winning in court didn't silence the noise in my head. For weeks I caught the same look on strangers' faces, that little double take that says, "How did you not know?" And it crawled under my skin until even the quiet hours felt crowded. The mailbox started coughing up letters from the prison and I swore I wouldn't open them, then opened the first 3 anyway. Each began with, "David, you twisted everything," then lurched between apology and threat, a plea in one sentence and a knife in the next. I burned number 4 in the sink and the smoke set off the alarm and I laughed alone like a lunatic while the beeping tried to shake the house clean. Money was tight and time was mean. Lawyers aren't cheap, and neither is rebuilding a life after someone drives it into a wall. The insurance company sent me a careful note thanking me for my cooperation. The DA called once to say, "You did the right thing," and then the world went back to its regular disasters while my nights stayed loud. I checked the deadbolt twice, sometimes 3 times, and my therapist called it control-seeking while I called it, "I'd like to wake up tomorrow," and somewhere in the middle we agreed to keep breathing. Chris refused to tiptoe around it. He showed up every Friday with a 6-pack and made me say the ugly part out loud, "She almost ruined me." The first time I said it, my voice sounded like someone else's. The second time it sounded like mine. Then the warden called. Not a rumor, not a letter, an actual call. "Mr. Carter," he said, voice dry as a file folder, "your ex-wife attempted to solicit another inmate to contact you. We intercepted the note and the payment. Internal discipline is underway. Do you wish to add a complaint?" My mouth went dry. "Yes," I said and heard how fast it came out. I was tired of being the reasonable one. I hung up and leaned my forehead against the cool kitchen window and counted the breaths until my ribs stopped hurting. 2 days later a certified envelope arrived from a hospital 3 states away demanding payment for a 10-year-old emergency room visit tied to a crash from before I met her. The name wasn't mine but the address was, and somebody had circled it in red like they were grading my life. My lawyer skimmed it and snorted. "Paper residue," he said. "We'll stomp it," and we did, but for the rest of the week every knock on the door felt like a test I hadn't studied for. So I started collecting small, boring victories. I moved the bat from beside the front door back to the garage and left it there overnight. I answered an unknown number and it was just a dentist reminder, not a threat pretending to be a voice. I cooked dinner and it tasted like food instead of nerves. The next morning another letter showed up with her handwriting loud on the envelope and I didn't open it. I dropped it into the fire pit, struck a match, and watched the smoke climb out of my yard like a soul that finally remembered the exit. That evening the warden called again. "Mr. Carter, we need a statement," he said. "Your ex-wife tried to pass your address to a guard in exchange for a favor. We've referred it to the state." I closed my eyes and felt the old anger rise and fall like a wave that finally knew where the shore was. "I'll come in tomorrow," I said. I set the phone down, looked at the straight line of the deadbolt, and for the first time in a year I locked it once, not twice. I made tea instead of opening a beer. And when the house settled after midnight, it sounded like a home again, not a stage waiting for the next scene. The next morning I drove to the state facility to give my statement, palms slick on the steering wheel like I was the one on trial. A guard led me down a humming corridor to a room with a thick pane of glass and a phone bolted to the wall. She requested to be present, the warden said. You don't have to agree. I almost said no. Then I remembered gasoline on my hood and final scapegoat, underlined twice, and I nodded. Julia came in wearing beige and handcuffs, hair tied back into something practical and small. For a half second my chest flickered. Not love, not pity, just muscle memory of a life I no longer owned. She lifted the phone. I didn't. I gave my statement through the slot, steady and clean. The stage damage, the fake x-ray, the solicitation, the guard, the letters. She mouthed, "You look tired," and I thought I slept actually and let the silence do the talking. When it was over, the warden asked if I wished to pursue charges for the new misconduct. Yes, I said, and the word landed like a stamp. Back home the house felt different, lighter, or maybe I did. The bat stayed on the garage shelf. The deadbolt clicked once. I drove by the body shop on purpose and Luis lifted a hand like a small salute. You made it. I bought basil and tomatoes and cooked a meal that didn't taste like adrenaline, and when Chris came by he ate in the quiet like the quiet was the point. So that's it? He asked. That's it, I said, and waited for panic that never showed. People stopped asking how I missed it and started offering their own ghost stories. Turns out everybody knows a con, they just don't expect one to set their table. A barista said her aunt lost a house to a fake slip and fall. A contractor said his cousin's ex staged a crash with her sister. Every story ended with, I never thought it could happen to us, and I nodded because I had been us, and now I wasn't. Spring showed up loud and gaudy. I fixed the fence, painted the steps, planted mint behind the shed because Chris swears you shouldn't have to buy mint twice. I got a raise that someone called handling pressure, and I pocketed the irony. At the market a woman asked about the thin scar on my wrist and I said I'd pulled a splinter I should have sanded a year ago. She laughed and it didn't feel like a test. Julia sent one last letter. The prison stamped it, refused, and sent it back. My lawyer framed a photo of the stamp with a note that said paper residue can be art, and I hung it where the bat used to lean. That night, with Mint trying to take the yard, Chris said, if she walked up right now, what would you say? I thought longer than I expected. Nothing, I said and pointed to the door. Everything that needs saying is already in there, the lock that clicks once, the shelf with a bat, the space where a script used to be. He nodded, and the fence popped in the heat like a period at the end of a sentence. People keep asking if I regret any of it, marrying her, exposing her, watching the cuffs close. Regret is a long word for a short answer. No. I regret the years I auditioned for a part in someone else's show. I don't regret the lights coming up. Some stories don't need a twist, they need a verdict. Here's mine. She wanted a final scapegoat and got a final witness. I want it to be done and I am. And when my hand hovers over the lock out of habit, I let it fall because the first click is enough when the house is finally mine.